I am wondering if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you just saw the president sitting there with the Prime Minister of Canada. Mr. Carney announced that the Houthis have flown in the towel and raised the white flag. Do we believe him? I'm joined by Haviv Redigur, the politics and conflicts writer for the Times of Israel. He's also the host of Ask Haviv Anything, a podcast I never miss. Haviv, welcome. You picked a timely day to come. What do you make of President Trump's announcement that the Houthis have thrown in the towel?
I assume he's telling the truth about what the Houthis have told the Americans. They probably have asked the Americans to stop bombing them. The American campaign against them has been very effective. I suspect, I don't want to go out on a limb here, that the timing has something to do with the Israeli demolition of Hodeidah port, their central port for exporting oil and their main source of foreign currency income, because they just bombed our airport.
Well, before he made that announcement, I had done my outline for my interview, and I was going to start with the fact that the Houthis had hit David Ben Gurion Airport. I mean, that was like a quarter mile away from a disaster on par with 10/7. It could have killed hundreds, if not thousands, of people. Do you think the prime minister and his cabinet are going to accept guarantees given to America and not to Israel?
Oh, I think that what we have done is force the Houthis to choose. They, by the way, don't have that good aim. It was pure luck. They've attacked Israel hundreds of times, right, in the last 19 months. And by pure luck, they happened to almost hit something actually strategic and important, and that would have been a devastating hit just in terms of the human cost. But the Israeli response was massive. And
you're back now. You said they happened to hit something that's strategic. So pick up from there.
Yeah, they happen to hit something that is strategic and could have had a huge human cost, but they don't. Again, they don't have aim, so it's not. It's not. It was an accident. The Israeli response has been a response that says that we will play this game for as long as you want to play this game, but we're going to exact a cost from you that is many, many times over what you exact from us. And so we took out this foundational port for the Houthis, this one place where they can ship oil. There's one last port where they can still get Iranian missiles, and by the way, everything else they import. But as long as they're bringing Iranian missiles and shooting them at us, that port is going to go as well. That's the next step you should watch for. And now that we are willing to exact from them those costs, they can't afford to be in a fight with the Americans. So the Israelis have, I don't know what, liberated international shipping, assuming President Trump's statement was accurate, assuming the Houthis actually abide by the agreement President Trump is talking about.
Now, Haviv Redigur raises an existential question. Since 10/7, I've talked to you a few times about how do you restore deterrence to Israel's enemies. And the answer is you just got to beat Hamas, and now you've got to pulverize the Houthis. But I don't really know that deterrence has been restored. Do you think it has vis-a-vis the head of the snake in Iran?
Yeah, no, not even close. The terms cannot be established with organizations like the Houthis, Ansar Islam, as they call themselves. This is a movement whose slogan on their flag says, "Death to America, death to Israel, a curse upon the Jews." So I don't think we can restore deterrence. They will continue to attack to the last Yemeni. They don't care about the cost to Yemen, including Yemeni civilian lives. We saw that in the Yemeni civil war, in which 250,000 people starved to death, including 85,000 children. The Houthis don't care. They don't experience that suffering of their own people as a cost. And so, no, you can't deter them at all. Absolutely not. What you can do is bankrupt them to the point where they can't move or breathe or shoot. And that is something that the Israelis are perfectly willing to do. And the other thing you can do, and Prime Minister Netanyahu said this in a statement earlier today, or maybe yesterday, depending on what time zone you're in, what Netanyahu said was, we're going to bring the cost to the terror masters in Iran. And that is the deterrence, that we're going to actually start to exact massive costs from Iran for what the Houthis are doing. By the way, President Trump said that as well.
President Trump also said he's got a major announcement tomorrow. And hopefully that announcement will not be a bad deal with Iran. I don't know whether or not he's willing to sign a bad deal with Iran, but that's what's got me worried. Is that what got you worried, Haviv? A bad deal with Iran?
No. That would be very bad. But there is something that actually I'm very hopeful for, which is a good deal with Hamas, in which we get out more of our hostages. The Israelis have not actually launched the massive offensive they announced and that the cabinet approved yesterday. What the Israelis have done, or 2 days ago, what the Israelis have done is announce that that offensive against Hamas is going to launch if Hamas does not come forward with a deal with the Americans. In other words, on the schedule of President Trump's visit, that President Trump himself is going to said he's going to try and reach some kind of a deal. So if we have a hostage deal that releases hostages, that's a wonderful thing. If what he's going to announce is a deal with Iran that leaves infrastructure in place, like the amazing deal that Bill Clinton struck with North Korea not to build nukes, and then it suddenly built nukes, like, the amazing deal with Iran in the past, in which it didn't actually push them back at all. It just made them agree Scout's honor not to continue to enrich. Look, don't leave infrastructure in place. If you have a deal with Iran in which it retains its capacity to enrich, its centrifuges, its installations, then no deal matters, because you're never going to bomb them, and it just depends on whether or not they want to keep the deal at any particular moment. The only deal that counts, the only deal that matters, the only deal that would work is a deal in which all the infrastructure is removed, like the deal with Libya, like the deal with Ukraine, which is a whole different situation. But Ukraine actually has no nuclear program because the infrastructure was removed. If you can get that deal, that averted war and saved the Middle East from nuclearization.
Now, that deal would involve, it's not very hard to do. You see, I think that's like a one pager. We're going to open up the following list of sites to IAEA inspectors, and we're going to bring in hammers and we're going to smash the centrifuges. And here, by the way, is a big box of our enriched uranium. Take it with you. It's not a hard deal to do, Habib. Do you actually expect, because I don't, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and the mullahs to agree to anything like that?
No, I think they'd prefer a war to giving up the nukes.
I
By the
agree.
way, I don't know anyone who disagrees with that assessment. Not on pro deal, anti deal, not the Hawks, not the Doves. I don't think there's anyone who thinks that the Iranians are going to give up the infrastructure. And if they don't give up the infrastructure, none of it matters. People, Democrats like to lord over Trump that now he's looking for a deal with Iran, but he's the one who backed out of the JCPOA, that first Iran deal that Obama sealed with them in 2015. Well, guess what? If the JCPOA was still in force, then by the actual agreements in the JCPOA itself, Iran would now be able to start installing advanced centrifuges and enriching. Under the deal, the limits on those things already would sunset by 2025. So don't give us a deal like that. I know that to a presidential administration, 10 years feels like a very long time, but in the history of grand strategy and in the Middle East and in the way the Iranians think, 10 years is not a long time. Either all the infrastructure is dismantled and they can't go for a bomb, or they will go for a bomb. It's that simple.
Well, you are a realist, and I am a realist. So that brings me to question number three. No matter what the president announces tomorrow, what is Netanyahu waiting for? Because the problem is in Tehran in a dozen different sites around a very big country, but you've demonstrated the ability to damage that very big country strategically. What is he waiting for?
Two comments. First of all, I don't know. Nobody knows. It's the $64,000 question. Some of Netanyahu's people have been telling Israelis asking these questions, don't worry, Trump is with us. Don't worry, he's trying to reach a deal. He genuinely wants a deal. But if there is no deal, and we know the Iranians won't give him the deal that he actually needs, then he will ride shotgun with us on an attack. The reason Netanyahu believes it's worth waiting for an attack, I think, is that Iran has been building that nuclear program for 15 years to do nothing but survive an Israeli airstrike. The pieces of the program that are most essential are buried under mountains. And Israel doesn't really have the firepower to do the kind of damage that would actually set that program back not 1 year, not 18 months, but in fact 10 years, would really reset the program. All of Iran's infrastructures are exposed to the Israeli Air Force, including infrastructures that are part of the regime's war machine. In other words, the Revolutionary Guard Corps owns a huge percentage, up to half, of the oil infrastructure of Iran. So if you
Pause right there. I'll come right back, and I'll continue the conversation with Haviv next hour. I taped it right before the show. You are watching or listening to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Maybe before we're going to, as you know, the Middle East, Saudi Arabia. We're going to UAE and Qatar, and that'll be, I guess, Monday night. Some of you are coming with us. I think before then we're going to have a very, very big announcement to make, like as big as it gets, and I won't tell you on what, but it's going to, and it's very positive. I'd tell you if it was negative or positive. I can't keep that out. It is really, really positive. And that announcement will be made either Thursday or Friday or Monday before we leave. But it'll be one of the most important announcements that have been made in many years about a certain subject.
All right, now that's what I call a hook, America. Welcome back. I'm Hugh Hewitt. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you just saw the president say that. If you heard it on the Salem Radio Network or affiliate, the president said that a couple hours ago. That's a hook. That's a tease. That's like who shot JR. Here to speculate is Noah C. Rothman, chief political writer for National Review. Come follow him on X at Noah C. Rothman. Listen to him on the editions of The Editors with Rich Lowry that he appears on. Noah, what did you think of the hook?
It's quite the cliffhanger, as you say. My mind races. It could be a lot of things. It could be a trade deal. It could be a deal with Congress. My biggest fear, and my apprehension is fueled by today's announcement, that we are going to put a halt to what have been very effective, apparently, strikes on Houthi positions in Yemen, that it has to do with the resurrection of the JCPOA, Iran Deal 2.0. And I am very trepidatious about what that's going to look like, what the administration is retailing, conflicts depending on who you talk to and when you talk to them. And the fact that it is preceded by a loosening of the reins that we have imposed on the Houthis, up to and including an analysis that I wrote about yesterday, that U.S. intelligence, interdiction of Iranian drones and missiles, and strikes on command and control and launch positions in Yemen have been so sophisticated that the Houthis are firing everything they have for fear of losing them. That's what a winning campaign looks like. And to back off now repeats exactly, and I mean precisely, how Barack Obama handled the Houthis in 2015. We ingratiated ourselves to them.
Let's come back to that, but I just
make friends with this regime. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, right before you came on, I was talking with Haviv Reddy-Gur. I taped that interview last hour, and I'll play it throughout the course of the program. Haviv thinks it's going to be the announcement of a hostage deal in Gaza, and that it could be very good because it will prevent the need to level Gaza in search of the hostages and eradicating of Hamas. He agrees with you and with me that if it's about Iran, it's probably not going to be a great deal. In fact, He doesn't think a great deal is even possible for Iran. Neither do I, unless we're able to tell, and I just wanted to get your reaction to that. The only deal I think is a good deal with Iran is one where they throw open the doors of 12 facilities, give us hammers and wheelbarrows, and we take their uranium and their centrifuges out and we smash them. It's not that hard of a deal to do, but they'll never do it, right?
No, they won't do it. They regard their capacity to be a nuclear threshold state, at the very least, as being an existential issue. And they have every reason to believe that, based on our relations, for example, with North Korea. Nuclearization begets normalization, from what we've seen. Not diplomatic relations, but certainly the ushering into the international community in ways that, if you're a pre-nuclear state, you are still a rogue state, still anathematized and subject to really onerous military pressure as well as economic pressure. So the Iranian regime will not dismantle its nuclear program, and which is why I'm very skeptical that there's any other way out of this besides a strike on its nuclear capabilities. And I'm not convinced that such a strike would beget a region-wide war, in part because Iran is in the weakest position it has occupied arguably since the Islamic Revolution, certainly since the Iran-Iraq War in the early 1980s. We have a window of opportunity here.
Yeah, you're saying exactly what Haviv said, which is they just got through a winter where there was no gas, they don't have any money, and he actually also suggested that perhaps the Houthis threw in the towel because Israel destroyed their port yesterday, something we have been reluctant to do. I mean, absolutely obliterated their port. And while they can't fight one or the other of America or Israel alone, while they can fight one or the other alone, they can't fight us both at the same time. They've just given up. I just don't imagine Iran signing anything that could be good. And I think Marco Rubio being in the room gives me some reassurance. Doesn't it give you some reassurance?
It does. It's just that you don't know who's speaking for the administration when. Tulsi Gabbard, ODNI, said yesterday, or 2 days ago rather, in an interview, that she regards the diplomatic process here, which possibly culminates in civilian enrichment levels, 3.67% of enriched uranium, as being a perfectly fine resolution to this conflict. That is JCPOA. There are very few technological hurdles necessary to allow Iran to enrich to 3.7%, but then also to enrich to 20, 60, 80%. It gets easier the higher you enrich, and it gets faster the higher you enrich. So any civilian enrichment should be anathema. It should be our position that we will not accept enrichment capacities. Any cascading centrifuges you have can't just be mothballed. They must be disassembled verifiably by U.S. mechanisms, not international mechanisms, not the IAEA, but Western mechanisms that we can independently verify ourselves. That should be the beginning, middle, and end of negotiations. And if that's not good enough for Tehran, then the stick is very much present in the region. We have 2 carrier groups in the region. We have a lot of long-range bombers in Diego Garcia. We can do this. And the window of opportunity is here now, and it may not be here next year.
So I agree with all of that. I just want to close by asking you what percent. This is like Rich Lowry right now. Give me a percent that the deal is about Iran or about something else. All right. Is it 50-50? Is it 100% Iran and 0% something else? What do you think?
I think my state of apprehension is fueling my anticipation that this is going to be an Iran deal issue. Even if it was a Gaza hostage deal, there's bright sides to that, but there are also gloomy sides. If we do something that forestalls or makes it impossible for the Israeli government to do what it set out to do on October 7th, which is to destroy Hamas, we will have more terror. We will have more rockets. The lesson that we're learning in Yemen is the same lesson that the Israelis learned. You cannot destroy these. You cannot prevent an armed adversary, especially a non-state actor, from engaging in attacks on your territory from the air. You can disable them. You can degrade their capacity, but the capacity will come back. This is only something that can be done from the ground. And the Israeli government seems to resolve to engage with this threat from the ground. That's the only permanent way to do it. But that would be better, certainly better for the United States than an Iran deal.
I agree. Noah C. Rothman, always good to talk with you. Follow Noah over at X at Noah C. Rothman. Follow me, if you will, to my daily dose of Relief Factor, because I take it every day on the air. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, there it is. If you're listening on the Salem Radio Network, this is what it sounds like, because it doesn't sound like much. That's it, every day. In the first hour of the program, I take Relief Factor, and every day I tell you, you ought to be joining me in that practice. Why? Well, today has been a long day already, because I had to be downtown early this morning and then had a midday meeting and then had to rush back to the studio, and it's just been a long day. No trundling today, just a lot of walking along the busy sidewalks of the nation's capital. And I'll tell you, Relief Factor makes whether it's a hard day or an easy day easier. It gets rid of the minor aches and pains that accompany aging and exercise. And even if you're not doing a lot of the latter, you're definitely doing the former, and you should be taking it every day. Call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF. Or go to their website, find that starter pack offer at $19.95, less than $1 a day, for a 3-week supply of Relief Factor at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. I am hoping you're watching on the Salem News Channel or you're listening on the Salem Radio Network. Whatever you're doing, remember that if you've missed anything, you caught the tail end of Aviv Reddy Gore, or you heard a little bit of Noah, you can get almost every major interview over at my YouTube channel, Hugh Hewitt. You can also listen to the daily podcast, Highly Concentrated Hugh. I would like you to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel so that we get more people listening to more clips. It's more fun that way for me. I was on Special Report last night, got asked by Brett about judges and their nationwide injunctions, in part. Cut number 16.
Hugh, to Molly's point, the number of cases, the number of judges weighing in on this particular issue continues to go up.
It's a dizzying kaleidoscope of rulings, Brett, and Molly's right. Any which way that works. So what President Trump put on the table today is another item on a menu. The worst part of that menu is when you have to use force and innocent people are close at hand and people can get injured who are not in the country illegally and are not violent criminals. So if more people self-deport, that's an excellent way to leave the country and have an opportunity to come back. I think it's a brilliant idea, along with all the other things on the menu. We were overwhelmed for 4 years with between 10 and 20 million people entering the country illegally. Now to play catch up, the president's trying a number of different things. Eventually, the Supreme Court will roll over these rogue district courts. But in the meantime, whatever works to lessen the burden on the court system is fine by me. I also got asked by Brett Baer about the tariffs and the trade deal, and China in particular, cut number 17.
Hugh, are we seeing China really feel the pinch here to the point where they may really be forced to the table by their economic situation?
I think we are, Brett. I think President Trump has the correct measure of Xi Jinping, the General Secretary of the Communist Party. He's a tough man. He's a very tough man. And Trump is playing a tough game with him, which is what one has to do if you're going to take on maybe the most ruthless man in the world. Now, Donald Trump is always respectful of him, but China cannot afford not to have 3% GDP growth a year. They're going backwards right now. So whatever it is that Trump is doing, it's working. My hat's off to him. I also got asked, because I think Brett doesn't know if I'm Catholic or not, but he asked me about the Trump dressed as Pope meme, which I found pretty funny, and I told him that. Cut number 18.
Finally, Hugh, the Pope picture that got a lot of attention on Truth Social, fallout and pushback, and the president said it was a joke and people need to lighten up. What do you think?
Well, I'm a Catholic's Catholic, Brett, and I thought it was pretty funny. Now, I know some people don't like to joke about popes, but I think it was pretty funny. I laughed. I'm a Catholic. I don't know any Catholics who didn't think it was funny. And for those who can't take a joke, lighten up. I really do believe that. I do not know why anyone takes offense at anything on the internet ever. It's all memes all the time. Let me check on the market, brought to you by AmericanFederal.com. That is our great sponsor. Nick Grovich and his team at AmericanFederal.com buy and sell gold. They also sponsor a market report once a program. And today, it is near close, right? We're not quite at the close yet. The Dow is down 0.65. The S&P is down 0.37, and the NASDAQ is down 0.43. But gold has gone up 3% again. Now, that's back-to-back 3% increases. So it's at $3,425 an ounce. I remind you, Nick Grovich sent me an email probably a month ago, and he said, well, I think it's going to hang around 3,000 for a while and then go north fast. And Nick is a prophet. I'm going to be listening to him now for a long time about weather reports. Nick called this $3,425 an ounce. I bought back in January. When was it? $2,800 an ounce or something. So I'm pretty happy, but I'm not out selling it. That's not what gold is for. Gold is part of a diversified portfolio. Everyone should buy some. Don't remember what price you bought it at. Don't care about it. Don't worry if it goes down or up. It reflects the international market. It reflects anxiety or lack of anxiety. It also, I think it reflects right now the fact that we really do not want a war between India and Pakistan because they're nuclear powers. And I believe that the market is jittery as a result, and a jittery market means things like gold go up 3%. Who knows what it'll do tomorrow? All I can tell you is that for the past 100 years, gold more than kept pace with inflation. If you want to talk to Nick or his team, the number's right there on the Salem News Channel, lower third, 1-800-221-7694. But I'm going to repeat it for those of you in your cars. 1-800-221-7694. If I do it 3 times and I do it 3 times slowly, there's a chance you'll remember it. 1-800-221-7694. But the easiest thing to remember is AmericanFederal.com. Give Nick a call, because I'm just going to keep giving you the gold price every day. And every day that you don't buy and it goes up, you kick yourself. And every day that you did buy and it goes down, you'll kick yourself. Don't kick yourself. Just buy it and put it away. Call Nick and his team at American Federal, 1-800-221-7694.
Can you tell us a bit more about the deal that you've reached with the Houthis?
No, it's not a deal. They've said, please don't bomb us anymore, and we're not going to attack your ships.
And where did you hear about that?
It doesn't matter where I hear it. The very good source, I could tell you. Very, very good source. Would you say, Marco? I would say pretty good, right, JD? A very good source.
All right, we don't know what that means. Maybe David Drucker, chief political correspondent for the Dispatch, knows what that means. David, what does that mean, a very good source?
Yeah, I have no idea, although maybe he spoke directly with the leader of the Houthis.
Is there a leader of the Houthis? If so, I have not been introduced or seen any reference to him or her. It's not a her.
I mean, I don't know. I occasionally see news conference clips with a Baghdad Bob looking like figure before a microphone. This is something, Hugh, I didn't look into today or follow up on, so I don't have an answer for you. But obviously, if they'd like the United States to stop bombing them, there are ways to communicate that.
Second part
You have to
of
wonder
what was
if
a
it
very
actually came through the Iranians. You have to wonder if it came through the Iranians, to be honest with you.
That's what I'm worried about, because the second thing the president said today is that before he leaves on his foreign trip, he has a very big announcement, and it's a really good announcement, the kind of announcement he likes to make. Well, that means a deal. Now, if it's a trade deal with China or a trade deal with the EU or something like that, great. Haviv Redigur, who started the program, suggested it might be a hostage deal with Hamas, which would be fine by Haviv and most Israelis. Fine. An Iran deal, oh boy, I'm worried about that, because I just don't believe that they'll ever do a deal that makes any sense. What, you got any guesses?
My guess earlier today, and I think actually I might like your guess more, but my initial guess was that the announcement will be that Saudi Arabia is joining the Abraham Accords. This was something that was in the works under the under the Biden administration. I had Republicans telling me they thought it would get done. Then October 7th happened, totally put that on ice. And this is something I'm sure that's important to President Trump. He's headed to that region in particular. He has had good relations with the Saudis in the first term, does again in the second term. So that's what I was thinking. But your
David,
guess
that makes
is
a
possible.
lot. Let's play the clip again, so people who just tuned in or are watching on the Salem News Channel get a chance to see and hear the president, because I think that makes a lot of sense. Cut number 3.
And we'll have maybe before we're going to, as you know, the Middle East, Saudi Arabia. We're going to UAE and Qatar, and that'll be, I guess, Monday night. Some of you are coming with us. I think before then we're going to have a very big announcement to make, like as big as it gets, and I won't tell you on what.
Right, David, you're right.
It's very positive.
You're right. It is Saudi Arabia joining the Abraham Accords. I withdraw my earlier prognostications. Yours makes more sense than mine, because we can't possibly have a deal done with Iran. And he knows that any deal with Iran is going to be a bad deal, right? That it's going to immediately divide the people in the country.
Well, what I would say is it probably would take longer, because there are so many technical issues with any Iran deal, whether it's a good deal or a bad deal, to iron out, that I don't see how they'd be able to announce this soon, unless they had a framework of a deal, and now they've got to iron out the technicalities of it. Look, I tend to agree with you in this regard. I don't see the Iranians ever agreeing to a deal that is worth our signing on to and enforcing. But President Trump does seem sort of adamant about trying to put to rest some of these geopolitical hotspot problems, and so I don't rule out the notion that he'd be willing to sign on to an Obama-like deal, believing that, well, I'm not Obama, and therefore they won't test me.
David, there's also an American being held hostage in Gaza. That's a very big deal to get the American back as well. It has always mattered. In the first Trump term, before he became National Security Advisor, Robert O'Brien was the ambassador, special envoy for hostage affairs. Whenever anyone came back, they went right to the Oval. That would be a big deal. But given what he said afterwards, we're playing Clue here about I'm going to Saudi Arabia, the Emiratis, and Qatar. I think you're right. Have you tested your theory out with anybody else?
No, I haven't had a chance. I've been chasing a few stories today and didn't look into that one yet. I just thought the way he described I'm headed to Saudi Arabia, I have a big deal. You've made me second guess a little with the Iran thing. I don't think, as important as a hostage release would be, the description the tease he gave just seems like it's bigger than something.
I know. What a tease. I mean, the guy's such a showman. Anyway, I got to ask you 2 things. One, Rick Crawford will be on, chairman of the House Intel Committee. They've released a report on the softball shooting. I have a 4-minute clip of Steve Scalise, which I'm not going to play right now. Boy, is he burned about what the FBI did with the almost assassination of Majority Leader Scalise back in the day, at the ball field in Alexandria. Have you been following that story today? Because a lot of congressmen are pretty ticked off about what the Bureau did.
Yeah, look, I think there's going to be a lot of discussion about this. Full disclosure, my wife is and her business partner are the majority leaders fundraisers. And look, I remember that morning because I'm the one that had to tell her what happened. And so I just expect this won't be the last we hear of this. And it's going to occupy a lot of attention, at least inside the Beltway.
It sounds to me like the Bureau tried to bury it. They said it was suicide by cop when it was most definitely not suicide by cop. It was a relatively well-planned, if poorly executed, assassination plot.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what it was. And I'm more interested in why the FBI handled it that way than the fact that they handled it that way, because this isn't one of those things where if they had just laid it out, there's some national security implication or some domestic societal implication. It doesn't make sense, so I don't want to prejudge or guess, but I wouldn't be surprised to see members of Congress try and get to the bottom of this, because on both sides of the aisle, people were very shook up about this.
Well, as one would be when they attempt to assassinate half of Congress.
Yeah.
David M. Drucker on the Dispatch. Thank you for joining me. Follow him on X at David M. Drucker. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, then you will recognize Dwayne. If you're listening, you will understand Dwayne. Dwayne, you don't have a jacket on today. What's the matter with you?
Because I was just getting off of the computer with the Ukrainian State Department.
Oh, how are they doing? Are they doing better than our Department of the Army, which can't connect with us?
Well, yeah. She literally just called me and said, we're trying to make sure we're in, and so they're in. I just didn't have a chance to put my
I'm
coat
glad.
on.
I'm looking forward to talking to the ambassador next hour. I wanted to ask you about myphdweightloss.com, 864
644
1900. That's
864
644
1900.
Is there a segment of My PhD Weight Loss that is titled "When Your Tech Goes Bad"? Is there a segment in there?
There should be.
There should be, because if ever you were in a stress eat, it was yesterday.
It was yesterday, and of course, you certainly did not help.
I know. I tried my very best to make it worse.
Yes, you did, and you succeeded. And you know what the fun part was? The fun part was by the tail end of the day, Harley, who last time I checked on the order of totem pole rankings, is at the bottom.
Well, no, not quite at the bottom. Ben is at the bottom.
Ben's at the bottom. He's
the
above
bottom.
Ben. But yeah, even he started piling on by the end of the day. It was one of those days.
So myphdweightloss.com, 864
644
1900. They're a fine sponsor. That is
864
644
1900.
And I mention it because a lot of people tend to stress eat.
Yes.
But Dwayne didn't stress eat yesterday, did you?
No, and yes, we can hear you. Hang on. That was you. That was Ukraine. I'm yelling at.
Don't do that again. Putin will get markings on the studio.
Yeah, it's working. Give me 20 seconds. I'm just on the air.
Yeah, okay. All right, you go back to work. Yeah, we did our promo for My PhD Weight Loss. 864
644
1900. If you want to lose weight the old-fashioned way, without the stress that comes with working for me and Salem, then go to myphdweightloss.com. Because if Dwayne can lose, and he did, 50 pounds, and keep it off, and he has, then you can too. 864 644 1900. Are you missing Dennis? Here's a little bit of Dennis Prager to tide you over from Pragertopia.
Here is a question that seems easy and isn't. It was posed to me in a public dialogue, distinguished rabbi in Los Angeles, Rabbi David Woznicki, and he asked me, out of nowhere, so what's the greatest single source of happiness in your life? And here I am, the happiness guru, and it's a toughie.
I'm pretty sure he said me. But I'll have to go listen to Pragertopia. I was walking down the street. I told Aviv Rediger this at the beginning of the show. Walking down the street in downtown D.C. today at about 10:30, an Orthodox rabbi I know from the kippah and the approach. He said, "I'm Rabbi X from Jerusalem. I love your show. I love you." I said, "Have you hugged a Gentile today?" He said, "You're the first, but not the first counting last night." So I think Dennis would have said me, because I was clearly the best source of happiness for that rabbi. Dennis will be back, we pray, soon. Joined by Ukraine's ambassador to the United States, Ambassador Oksana Markarova. Welcome back. It's good to see you again, Madam Ambassador. First of all, key thing, how goes the war?
Thank you, Hugh. It's always good to be back, and warm welcome to all of our viewers. Well, unfortunately, today is one of the days when Russia attacked the civilian infrastructure again. So while our brave defenders are holding a very difficult line and Russians were not able to move during the previous weeks, and we have been able to defend Ukraine everywhere, while, of course, working very hard on the peace proposals and peace solutions. And as you know, Ukraine is very committed to peace. I mean, we said yes to pretty much all peace initiatives that have been put forward by President Trump, and our president is discussing, of course, all of them with President Trump. But Russia continues to attack infrastructure and to attack residential areas. So some kids have been killed today again. So it's while we do have some good news, right, like the exchange of prisoners and return of Ukrainian prisoners back home today, we welcome 205 Ukrainians, our defenders, back from Russian captivity. While we did sign a historic deal with the United States, unfortunately, there are daily grim faces of war and war crimes that are still being committed by Russia.
Ambassador Makarova, I did not know about the prisoner exchange. That is indeed good news. I did know that Ukraine shot down 2 Soviet fighters using drone technology. That's good news. Not Soviet, Russian fighters. I wanted to ask you about that, and I also wanted to ask a question that I haven't seen anywhere. Have any North Korean troops entered into Ukraine in the area that Russia invaded? Have any North Koreans been found there?
Well, we're fighting them in the Russian territory, where we still conduct the defensive operation, as you know, in Kursk region and others. We did not specifically capture them on our territory, even that which is occupied by Russians temporarily, but we definitely see them in numbers on the Russian territory.
All right. Now, what about the use of the drones to bring down 2 Russian fighters? That's an extraordinary feat. It appears to me like Ukrainian military is innovating in ways that no one has ever seen before.
Hugh, as you know, Ukraine has been big on innovations and digitalization even before the full-fledged war started. But during this time, we developed a number of maritime drones, which liberated the Black Sea, and it's just Ukrainian capability, and also more than 120 now new platforms of aerial drones of all different types. And we cooperate with a number of companies on that, including American companies. But I think unfortunately drones are going to be the new capabilities of the future wars and deterrence. And Ukraine is at the forefront of that. So yes, we're using drones more and more. They're evolving. We're developing them as we go. Hopefully, we can get to peace faster and then focus all that innovation on the deterrence capabilities. But definitely drones, where we would like to see more cooperation with American companies, because this is going to be where the defense tech is going to be developing in the future.
Now, Ambassador Makarova, I think my audience knows President Trump and President Zelensky have agreed on a way forward, but Putin won't say yes. Putin won't say no. He won't say anything, and everything he says yes to, he lies about. Are you an optimist that he's going to change his mind anytime soon and actually get down to details of a peace deal?
I'm an reserved or optimist, because I do believe in Ukraine and I believe in the United States. And I know how strong my president and all Ukrainians feel about not only defending us, but also getting to just and lasting peace. And I also know how strongly President Trump feels about getting to end this war and getting to just and lasting peace. So we just have to work hard, and we just have to do what we do, and hopefully we all together will be able to convince Russia to stop.
All right. Now, Madam Ambassador, one of the things I've learned over the last 2.5 years is that Ukraine is to a certain extent the world's breadbasket. It exports so much of the world's food supply. It's sort of astonishing. Has that resumed anything like normalcy now? Because I think you lost one harvest at least. I don't know if you're able to continue the vast farming operations in the rest of the country now.
Ukrainian farmers, like American farmers, are unbelievable, even under constant attacks, even while their fields are really polluted by mines and unexploded ordinances. They continue to harvest and they continue to plant throughout these horrible years of war. Even during the war, we continue to feed more than 400 million people globally. And as I said, because Ukrainian armed forces with our naval drones capabilities were able to liberate the Black Sea and have the corridors reestablished, we also export, and we started doing that last year. So it's difficult. The infrastructure is under constant attack. On May 4th, Russians attacked Kiev and Cherkasy, but on May 5th, they attacked Odessa, and they keep attacking Odessa, residential areas, but also ports on a regular basis. That's why air defense is such a big necessity to keep it to secure Ukraine, because again, we need to keep the world fed, and that's one of the key industries, in addition to the rare earth minerals, to critical minerals, to energy and infrastructure, which will be part of this new investment fund, which we just recently signed with the United States. And just today, Hugh, we have the news, the committee of the Parliament of Ukraine already, because we have to ratify the deal on our side. So the committee did support it today, and hopefully it will be ratified by the Parliament today, soon.
Excellent. Last question, Madam Ambassador. Senator Graham is one of your strongest supporters in the United States Congress. He's very happy with the defense budget that's been proposed. Does that budget provide Ukraine with adequate weaponry in the event that Putin does not stop the war?
Well, we will be still discussing it. Right now. It's the U.S. defense budget, and we have to discuss the potential and possible support from the U.S. going forward. But we're still working very actively with Pentagon on all the packages that are being delivered right now. So that is something that we are not discussing, of course, publicly in detail. But as you know, the American, European, Nordics, other countries' support is essential to us. And I just want to say how grateful we are to American people, to American leaders, for providing us with this defense, because that will get us to peace faster.
Ambassador Markarova, please keep coming back. Thank you for giving us the update, and congratulations on getting the committee approval of the minerals deal, so that moves forward and America invests physically as well as emotionally and with armaments in Ukraine. That's a great bit of news, and I appreciate your sharing it with us. Godspeed. Ambassador Oksana Markarova has been a regular guest on the program over the last year, and I hope she keeps coming back. Let me tell you, coming up on the Salem News Channel on the Hugh Hewitt Show, part 2 of my interview with Haviv Rettig-Gur. Haviv is, of course, the political and conflict correspondent for the Times of Israel. I talked to him in the hour before the show today. He had just landed. I think he's in the U.S. somewhere. I'm not sure where he came. But he does ask Haviv anything, and I did ask him everything. I've got a couple more segments, Byron York coming up as well, and Ohio Attorney General David Yost. We got a lot of news to make, but I do want to remind everyone, I am now a consumer cellular customer, and you should consider making the switch to consumer cellular. You can see it right there if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, consumercellular.com/Hugh, or you can call them at 1-800-221-76. No, did I get that wrong? 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. I have 2 numbers I always have to repeat, one for American Federal and one for Consumer Cellular. So they get jumbled in my head sometime, but I know Consumer Cellular ought to begin with information, the 411. 1-800-411-4454. It's very easy to remember after you do that part, because if you do 1-800-411, that will cue 4454. Just remember it. Here's why you should make this switch. A, and keep your number if you want to keep your number. You can transfer all your contacts, all your information, if you want to, or if you want a new phone, a start-over phone, a second phone, they'll do that as well. Consumer Cellular is absolutely top-quality consumer cellular connection. You do not have to sacrifice service for savings. You don't have to give up quality for cost. You can have it all. All you have to do is make the switch to Consumer Cellular. Big Cellular has been selling you a lot more than you need for a long time. Now, if you're a high data user, I mean, you've got a couple of teenagers in the house and they're just on your cellular phone all the time, then you want the 2 lines for $60 a month unlimited data. But if you're over 50 and you don't really need that, you just want 8 gigs because all you do is text and call Consumer Cellular or go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. 1-800-411-4454 or consumercellular.com/Hugh. Right before the today's program began, I sat down with Haviv Rettig-Gur, who had half hour in his schedule open, and I talked to him. Let's go to part 2 of that interview with Haviv Rettig-Gur.
Take out that oil infrastructure, that costs the Revolutionary Guard Corps that's exporting all these wars throughout the region, that goes directly to their bank account. We can take that out. We can bankrupt the regime alone without America, but we can't take out the centrifuges. We can't hit Fordo in a way that actually sets the program back 10 years. For that, we do need America. So I think Netanyahu is waiting and hopeful, and everybody's trying to figure out what Trump's red lines are, how that negotiation is going, and whether Trump is falling for, the latest of many Iranian tricks and gambits in these negotiations.
Now, Haviv Rettig-Gur, Marco Rubio is his Secretary of State and now his National Security Advisor. He's always been an Iran hawk. He's always been someone who doesn't believe the mullahs. Does that give you some sense of security that the president will not go down the garden path of a JCPOA 2.0? To me, it's always been the fact the Iranians have been trying to kill him for 5 years, so I don't think he's going to actually settle for anything that isn't dispositively disarmament. But what do you think about having Rubio at his side in all this?
Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful thing because, I'll just say this, Hugh, you know these people better than I know these people. Okay. So I'd be more interested in your opinion than in mine, but I'll just say that the reading in Israel on Marco Rubio is that he gets the problem. America's interest and Israel's interest aren't always going to line up. In fact, they often don't line up, and that's okay. That's natural. On the question of Iran, there's blowback. That is a strike that the regime will be placed in a position of feeling as if its survival is threatened. A wounded tiger is a very dangerous thing. There are thousands of missiles that could hit Tel Aviv, and there are thousands of missiles that could hit American forces. This is not a decision to be taken lightly, and anyone who tells you it's easy is lying. But to understand the great danger of leaving this regime capable of building a nuke, that's the critical thing. And I know that Secretary Rubio understands that danger, understands it deeply and profoundly. And I know that President Trump understands just how bad these people are. So I don't know what's happening. Within the White House, I'll say something, I'm embarrassed to say it to you because you know this 10 times better than me, but there is this war on now between hawks and isolationists or restrainers and the more hawkish parts of the Republican Party. I don't know who's winning. You can't leave a nuclear capability in the hands of the Ayatollahs.
Yeah, the North Korean example is 1994 is exactly the reason why. Now, Haviv, I'm going to switch subjects a little bit. I was walking down the street downtown today to have coffee with a domestic policy expert, and a rabbi wearing a kippah comes up and says, "Can I give you a hug? I'm a Zionist rabbi from Jerusalem." And he was in town with all the Zionist rabbis from everywhere in Israel to do whatever they were doing up on Capitol Hill. I said, "Of course, the first Gentile you hugged today." He said, "Today, but not last night." How many Israelis are working their American counterparts to make them understand what you just laid out, that you cannot let Iran have a nuclear infrastructure? Because that's everything.
That's everything. That's an existential threat. Iran's backing was the reason Assad was able to kill 600,000 people. Without Iran, he would have fallen back in 2013, and the Syrian civil war would not have become the catastrophe that it was. Without Iran's backing, the Houthis would not control half of Yemen, and that war would not have cost hundreds of thousands of lives. Without Iran's backing, there'd be no Hezbollah. In Lebanon, for decades, they called Hezbollah the Guards. Not Hezbollah, the Arabic name of the actual organization, but the Guards, meaning the branch of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps in Lebanon. Iran took over Lebanon. Iran took over Syria. Iran has tremendous influence in the Shia militias in Iraq and harassed and prevented America from doing in Iraq things that would have been marvelous for Iraq. The Americans built many, many hundreds of schools and wanted to leave Iraq a beautiful democracy. Well, one of the main agents working against that, never mind the naivete or questions about the policy, but there was this real desire. And one of the main agents working against that was Iran. So I want you to imagine a regime that has probably been responsible for the deaths of 1 million people in the Middle East in the last decade, having a nuke. That's the regime when it has very little money, very little capability. It's overseeing, by the way, a country that's in free fall. They just went through a bad winter without gas. They're one of the most energy-rich countries in the world, but it's also controlled by the regime, by the Revolutionary Guards, that the people don't actually have access to it. There are water shortages. There are drug use is exploding in Iran. There's, the life expectancy is collapsing. This is a regime overseeing a profound weakening and decline of their own country, also that they can sustain this awful revolution that they keep exporting to places and destroying them. So don't give them a nuke. That I think every Israeli is saying who has any access to any American.
And so, Aviv, having crippled first Hamas, then Hezbollah, and now the Houthis, does that make Iran, those are Iran's three proxies, and Hamas, while not dead, is dying. Hezbollah, while not dead, is on its back heels if it's even upright, and the Houthis are throwing in the flag. Does that make Iran more or less dangerous, that Israel has effectively wiped out the three legs of its four-legged stool, with it being the fourth leg?
There was once an astonishing assessment produced by the American intelligence community that argued that with the 2003 American invasion of Iraq, Iran froze its nuclear program. In other words, the moment they pulled back on the nuclear question was when the American military was suddenly very big and very next door. This is a regime that wants to survive. It believes that it has this mission to take over the world, redeem the world, and it believes that it should survive to do so. And so it is a regime that allows itself to be pragmatic, even if its grand vision is this sort of religious redemptionist, violent conquest kind of vision. So yes, I think that they are deterrable in the short term. They're not deterrable in the long term. And now that we've taken out many of their main deterrence-producing proxies. In other words, what was the purpose of Hezbollah? That when someone goes for Iran, Iran can set Israel on fire. Well, Hezbollah can no longer set Israel on fire. And the Houthis are trying, and they, by the way, agreed to a ceasefire with the United States. They did not agree to a ceasefire with Israel. So that is still going to be happening. But we have made it much, much more difficult for Iran to cause harm to Israel, and therefore made it much more cost-effective for Israel to actually do the work that actually bankrupts that regime, brings its capabilities down to the ground, and potentially even sets back its nuclear program. And with American help, actually destroys its nuclear program.
Right there. I will come back and finish Haviv, or at least as much as we can do. I want to tell you about my friends AndrewandTodd.com. Andrew Del Rey, Todd Avakian are lenders to people buying homes at Sierra Pacific Mortgage, our sponsor. And I was talking today with Akash Chogali from the Foundation for Economic, I get free op, but Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity. And we were talking about, believe it or not, this is what you do in Washington, is you sit down and you talk about how to make housing more affordable in Starbucks. And Akash is working on that. And we're talking about the fact that everyone who got a house during the 3% days is not moving, which means it's really tough to move, which means you really need Andrew and Todd on your side. Call them at 888-888-1172. I'll remind you again at the end of the show, at the end of this hour. But AndrewandTodd.com. If you're going to move, call them first so you can get pre-approved, get a pre-qualified letter, get a pre-approved notice of loan from AndrewandTodd.com. 888-888-1172. I'll explain more about that and more Haviv Redigur on the other side. Hope you're watching on the Salem News Channel, listening on the Salem Radio Network, or, of course, at HughHewitt.com. Haviv Redigur is one of my favorite guests. Every couple of months, I try and get Haviv to sit down and brief us on what's going on in Israel. We had a long talk today right before the show. Here's part 3 of that interview. Haviv, last question on Iran. I'm old enough to remember the Iran-Iraq War, which went on for a decade, I believe, about which someone famously said, I wish they both could lose. And they did not seem deterrable then when it cost hundreds of thousands of lives. They marched children through minefield. Has that ardor diminished to the point that the regime can actually fall? Because I've always thought that that's a flag in the ground that shows you that that regime is invulnerable to everything except force.
I think that there's a gap between how an American would look at that question and an Israeli would look at that question. Iran cannot actually threaten America. It can threaten a terror attack. It can threaten to kill an American diplomat. It can threaten these kinds of, which these are all things that it has done to various enemies it has had over the years. But it can't fundamentally existentially threaten America. It can fundamentally existentially threaten Israel. And so that very willingness to destroy their own people for the great religious revolutionary cause is why you have to destroy the regime. It's the opposite way of thinking about it. They will exact massive costs for bringing them down. And that's a reason with them for America, because there's, if they stick around, that's not a huge downside for America. So that's a reason not to take on the downside of bringing them down. But for Israel, them sticking around is a massive downside. And what all the damage they could possibly do going down is a smaller downside. They've already promised to destroy us. So yes, that very willingness to send, look at Hamas in Gaza. Hamas planned a war that would destroy Gaza. That's why you build 500 kilometers of tunnels under cities, something no one has ever done in the history of warfare. The point was, if the Israelis want to come for Hamas, they have to go through Gaza to do it. And that's what happened. There is no other way to fight Hamas. And you can argue the Israelis should have, shouldn't have, that's fine. And you don't have to come down on the Israelis being the good guys or the nice guys. But spare a moment to acknowledge just how monstrous Hamas's fundamental strategy is. Ditto with Hezbollah, ditto with the Houthis. This entire array of Islamists, this branch, this strain of radical political Islam that is willing to annihilate nations and their own nations on the altar of this great revolutionary war. That's why you have to destroy them. That's not why you leave them intact.
I've always explained to my friend, one bomb is all they need to go down in their minds as a great Islamist. They just need one bomb, and they got to get it on a truck, and they got to get it close to the border, or they got to get it onto the West Bank somehow, and then they win if they can make Israel uninhabitable because of one bomb, and that's why it's dangerous. I want to switch if I can.
Just to respond to that. Yeah, they don't win. That's what brings the Israeli nuclear counterstrike. In other words, that's how the Middle East goes nuclear. That is not they don't win, then everything gets bad. I wish the world would understand that if they get a bomb, nobody's building a bomb because Israel has one, allegedly, according to foreign sources. I'm not someone who actually knows, so I'm allowed to talk about it. But the Saudis are seriously planning a bomb. The Turks are seriously contemplating a bomb if Iran gets one. And so if we want to avoid them actually using it, don't look at what Hamas has engineered in Gaza and what the Houthis are willing to tolerate in Yemen. Don't look at that and tell me they're never going to use it. They are, Khrushchev. They're détente. They're, mutually assured destruction. It's just not a serious thing to say about this particular regime. So yes, let's avoid the nuclearization of the Middle East.
Pause it right there. Now, I've already had posted the entirety of the interview with Haviv at my YouTube channel. I want to remind everyone, whether you're listening on the Salem Radio Network, one of my great affiliates, by the way, brand new affiliate down in Jacksonville, WBOB. And I want to say thank you again to Jacksonville for carrying us, AM 600, 101.1 FM, Talk Radio, WBOB, in Duval. That's what they kept saying during the draft. I'm very glad to have Jacksonville join me. Florida is land of the free and home of the free. And I really appreciate being on from north to south there. But I also want my affiliates to know there is the Hugh Hewitt YouTube channel. I'd like you to like and subscribe. We only put up 2 to 4 different videos a day, usually big interviews that I do, like Dave Yost coming up, governor candidate in Ohio, Haviv Reddy-Gur, stuff that makes news we put up. And we got special guests today and Friday coming up, so you don't want to miss any of the show. And if you do, though, and you're a subscriber to the Hugh Hewitt channel on YouTube, you will not miss anything of import. I also want to remind you again, andrewandtodd.com, 888-888-1172, 888-888-1172. If you're buying a home in Jacksonville or anywhere else, those are the people you want to borrow your money from. Sierra Pacific Mortgage, the best rates, the best service, the best guys in the business. AndrewandTodd.com. Byron York is Washington Examiner's chief political correspondent, Fox News contributor extraordinaire. Byron, how are you today?
Doing well, You?
You know, it's always easier in my business. I don't know if it's easier in your business. You have to write stuff. All I have to do is play audio and talk. And so in my business, I love this president just because he gives me more sound bites in a day than Joe Biden gave me in 6 months. Let me play you the most intriguing one of the day. It's cut number 3.
We'll have maybe before we're going to, as you know, the Middle East, Saudi Arabia. We're going to UAE and Qatar, and that'll be, I guess, Monday night. Some of you are coming with us. I think before then we're going to have a very, very big announcement to make, like as big as it gets, and I won't tell you on what, but it's going to, and it's very positive. I tell you if it was negative or positive. I can't keep that out. It is really, really positive. And that announcement will be made either Thursday or Friday or Monday before we leave. But it'll be one of the most important announcements that have been made in many years about a certain subject, very important subject.
All right, Byron, I've been running the office pool here on what this is. It's the greatest tease ever. It's like Who Shot JR? What do you think it is?
Well, first of all, he says it's positive, right? So it doesn't mean we're going to go destroy something.
Correct.
I take it means we're going to build something. And my guess would be, and I'm going to just steal this from Dwayne, although I think it's probably true, Saudi Arabia joining the Abraham Accords.
Dwayne stole that from Drucker. Did he tell you that? Dwayne always.
No, he didn't tell me that.
No, he's
Okay,
like a comedian. He takes everyone's material and then he uses it. So, yeah, he took that from Drucker.
Well, you know, what was interesting is, was it last year? I think it was last year, Brett Baer went to Saudi Arabia, talked to MBS, and all they wanted to do was show Brett and his American audience all the stuff they were building, right? We're making ourselves a huge tourist center. We're spending billions and billions of dollars on this. We're building a whole new city. There's this incredible development. And this is not a country that wants to be at war perpetually. They just don't. I mean, they're building things. And so it strikes me, and everybody thought that if Trump had been president a bit longer, from January 2021, that it actually might have happened then. But then Biden came, did what he did, turned toward Iran, gave Iran the ability to get wealthy and cause all the trouble that it has caused in the last few years. But a lot of people thought, Trump back in, this will get back on track. Perhaps it could happen again. If it were this, the one thing I would caution is that, boy, it's happening pretty fast, but everything's been happening fast with Trump.
Yeah, Byron, I had Aviv Reddy Gur on, and I've posted the entire interview for those who are not watching on the Salem News Channel or listening on the Salem Radio Network. It's all posted at YouTube on my account. And we were talking about the prospect that it was a deal with Iran, and we were both persuaded that could not be a good deal with Iran, because a good deal with Iran could not have been done this quickly, because it will involve, any good deal with Iran would involve us getting their enriched uranium and our supervising the destruction of their centrifuges. So have you ruled that out? It can't be Iran, right? We can't be doing it.
I don't think, well, I would agree with you, and for that reason. I just don't see it happening that quickly. And, you know, the control that Trump wielded over Iran before was basically the ability to starve it of revenue. And I just don't see this agreement happening.
The third possibility, one that Haviv came up with, is that there will be a hostage deal and Israel will not have to level Gaza as it searches for the 20-odd hostages who are still alive and the 25 who are dead and whose bodies are being held captive. And, you know, that's supposed to kick off soon. Haviv thought maybe there's a hostage deal in the offing. The more I think about it, the less likely it is. That's not big enough to sell as hard as he sold it, right? The Abraham Accords would be.
Well, first of all, and I agree with that too. I mean, my original reaction when you just said that was that is not big enough. Also, as far as the rest of the world is concerned, Israel's already leveled a whole lot of Gaza, and that doesn't sound it. When Trump gets excited about something like that, I mean, think of his. I mean, you could go back to his develop Gaza proposal, and it could have something to do with that. He was kind of proud of that idea. A lot of people said, "Well, that's crazy," and he hasn't been pushing it, but it could be related to that. But my sense is, just given who Trump is, what he thinks is big, what he thinks is positive, this would be building something.
Yeah, Byron, someone told me the other day that Jeff Bezos has bought the rights to The Apprentice and he's running it on Amazon now. It's the second and third highest rated show in the last couple of weeks. I've never seen a minute of The Apprentice. Have you?
Yeah, I saw an episode or two. I mean, it was on quite a while ago. Yeah.
Well, I got to go watch it now because that was just extraordinarily interesting television when I watched it earlier today. And I thought, my goodness, this guy knows how to sell stuff. And
well, I mean, he is incredible. I've never seen anybody who had a better ability to sense how things will look. I mean, how do you think that picture of him and Zelensky in the Vatican happened? I mean, I don't know, but there are these incredibly dramatic. As a matter of fact, I was just writing my newsletter about what I thought was kind of an injustice in the Pulitzer Prize photography section.
Absolutely.
Where that incredible Evan Bucci photo of AP of Trump raising his fist in the sky saying, "Fight, fight, fight," after being shot. That there are these incredible moments that Trump is in that nobody else is in even one of them, and he's got a bunch of them.
Yeah, he does have an innate sense of timing, and it goes back to the debates of 2015, 2016. I've told it many times on air. He never left his mark. A lot of people, like John Kasich, never stayed on their mark, but some people would take the breaks and would leave. He never left. He had makeup done in the breaks, as everyone did, but he just never left his mark because he knew the mark was the right mark. It's about knowing television, and he knows television. I'm going to talk to Byron off air about Tim Scott, strike two, bad day for Tim Scott with Brian Kemp declining during the break. You'll have to listen on the YouTube channel to hear that. Stay tuned, America. I'm back with Byron York. Byron, last night I taped a podcast with Trey Gowdy, and Chairman Gowdy is hilarious, as you know. It can be very, very funny, and we were supposed to do it for 30 minutes, and we ended up talking for an hour and 10. And one of the things we talked about is the fact his good friend Tim Scott had struck out in Georgia with Brian Kemp running for Senate, and that it was a real down day for Tim Scott because that was his big pickup. Do the Republicans have anyone? Are they going to get Kelly Loeffler to run it? What are they going to do? Because Ossoff is imminently beatable.
Yeah, the flip side of this was Ossoff's best day since he got elected. So it's bad. Tim Scott being the head of the National Republican Senatorial Committee, bad day for him. It wasn't a great day. And when Sununu decided not to run in New Hampshire. And so this coming, the 26 senatorial elections are thought to be pretty much a layup for Republicans, and I don't see them losing control of the Senate. But those are a couple of seats that they could easily have had and might not.
Now, but what it goes to is, I don't think New Hampshire is doable without Sununu, but I suppose we'll try. But Georgia should be doable in any cycle with any decent candidate. It was lost in the runoff the last time because of the 2020 nightmare. Do you think they come up with just any reasonable center-right Republican who's kind of red but not too red?
Well, who would it be? Well, Doug Collins tried to run. Didn't work for him before. He's now Veterans Affairs Secretary. That's a good possibility.
That's a good possibility.
obviously, Marjorie Taylor Greene is somebody who gives a certain type of Republicans the scares, and some Democrats say, "Oh, please run her," assuming that they can win, but who knows? So, I mean, there's no obvious person. But what you're saying is, I mean, look, the fact that we have two Democratic senators from Georgia is a fluke anyway. And can that fluke actually continue?
I don't think so. Byron York, always a pleasure. Thank you. I'm going to write down Doug Collins right now because I think you win the prediction award for the day. Byron York on X America. Follow him there. Follow me to the next segment.
Salem Radio Network returns from break in 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show returns in 5 seconds.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Breaking news is happening at this hour. India may have attacked Pakistan. I will collect data during the break. We've been worried about this for a couple of days. It's not getting much attention, but Dwayne whispered in my ear that there are bulletins coming across the wire, so we will check that. I do want to let my AM 600 and 101.1 FM WBOB in Jacksonville, new audience, new affiliate down there, realize that when you join the Salem Radio Network, we do keep you abreast of the news when it happens. If you want to watch the show, you can watch it on the Salem News Channel, but if you need to go out in your car, keep it just tuned to AM 600 or FM 101.1, and you'll get WBOB, and you'll get me every afternoon. And then you'll know what's going on. And by the time Hour 3 starts in the 4 o'clock hour in the East Coast, I will have the details of what's going on in India. I'll go to my secret sources and find out what we think is happening there. Watch that space, because you got two nuclear powers. They hate each other. People forget in 1948 when the division of India occurred and Pakistan broke away and there was East and West Pakistan on both sides of India. 1 million people were killed in the Civil War, or the dismemberment of British India. The Raj was dismembered. And when the flag came down in 1948, the killing started. And there is no love lost between the Pakistanis and the Indians. That is a very dangerous situation. So I'm hoping it's a symbolic strike and not a real war. I'll find out about that. Let me remind you as well, and WBOB, you'll learn. This is Relief Factor if you're watching on the Salem News Channel. This is the bag that you will get if you call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. It'll cost you $19.95 because they discount every first order. It's 3 weeks. It is the only supplement, and I tell this to the WBOB audience. They haven't heard me say this before. I haven't taken a supplement in 20 years except Relief Factor, and I've been taking Relief Factor for 10 years. Why? Because I did the research. I talked to my brother, Mycroft, the PhD toxicologist who's retired. I talked to other doctors, and I take it every day, and the proof is in the pudding. I trundle a lot. Didn't trundle this morning. I had to go downtown. But I trundle a lot. That's slower than running. I used to run a lot, and I even raced a while. But now I'm older and slower, but I get moving every day. And I'm able to do it because of Relief Factor. And you get a 3-week starter pack. They lose money on every first order when you call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, or you go over to their website and you find relieffactor.com, and you find the first-time offer, $19.95 for 3 weeks. And you take it 3 times a day for the first 3 weeks. Get the level of Icarian, curcumin, resveratrol, and omega up in your body. Talk to any nutritionist. It's good for you. It really is good for you. It makes you feel great. It gets you out there. Whether you're walking 100 yards or you're doing 10 miles, whatever it is your thing, whether you're swimming, going to the gym, you're one of those crazy bikers, no matter who you are, WBOB people, and everyone else, go try relieffactor.com. I'm coming back with Representative Rick Crawford. I'll update you on India and Pakistan. Chairman Crawford runs House Intel, and they got a blockbuster report on the FBI in the aftermath of the attempt to assassinate half the Congress in 2017. We'll tell you all about it next hour on the Hugh Hewitt Show. The breaking news at this hour, India says it has conducted military strikes on 9 sites inside of Pakistan in retaliation, I'm reading from the Wall Street Journal report, in retaliation for a deadly militant attack on tourists in Kashmir, intensifying a confrontation between the nuclear-armed neighbors. The Indian Defense Ministry said its forces carried out strikes on terrorist camps that have been used to stage attacks against India. According to a statement released on Wednesday, quote, "We are living up to the commitment that those responsible for this attack will be held accountable," India's defense ministry said. So, very dangerous situation. I told you earlier when I did the market update on American Federal that gold had gone up 3% yesterday and 3% today. I think it's close to $3,500 now. That I thought that might reflect worries over a Pakistan-India war. They've had wars in the past since 1948, the division of India in 1948, and into East Pakistan, West Pakistan, one of which is now Bangladesh, and just Pakistan. And Pakistan and India, in that civil war, in that partition, 1 million people died. And now, of course, no one's going to remember 1948, but there's no love lost. There have been, I believe, 3 wars since then, full-scale, honest-to-goodness wars, and lots of saber-rattling. And China's kind of cozied up with Pakistan, and we're pretty good terms with India. And no doubt President Trump is working the phones. I'm standing by for Rick Crawford. There's stuff going on the floor of the House, so we missed one earlier today. I want to play for you while we wait to see if he comes. Steve Scalise, who gave a press conference today about the FBI report on the congressional baseball shooting that was simply ridiculous, and the House Intel Committee made a report on it today, and Steve Scalise reacted. Of course, Steve Scalise almost lost his life in that attack. Cut number 23.
So I saw your statement expressing some concerns after you've read the report. You're asking the FBI director to look into that. What exactly are your concerns, and how high do you think that this went at the FBI?
So if you go back to 2017, after the baseball shooting, the FBI had brought in the members of the team. Roger Williams was one of those members who was part of that briefing. And at that meeting, they went through some of the information. Some of it was classified, some of it wasn't. But they ultimately let us know what their conclusion was. And that's when they said it was classified as suicide by cop. And I'll tell you, I was offended. I think all of us there were highly offended that that was the conclusion that the FBI in 2017 came to, because it wasn't what happened on the baseball field. He went there with the intention of killing all of us on the baseball field, and he had a list in his pocket of other Republicans he wanted to kill. It was very politically motivated, and it was clear they suppressed a lot of facts. And what the FBI report that Kash Patel's FBI came out with today shows they suppressed factual evidence to reach a different conclusion than what the facts led to show. Suicide by cop was not the conclusion. They ultimately changed it to domestic terrorism. And I applaud the new FBI for making that change in the justification. But they also revealed some of the other facts that were suppressed. The fact that it was politically motivated, even though they had some of that factual evidence, they hid that because they didn't want to make it look like it was politically motivated. Look, the guy went there and not only tried to kill all of us. I had 2 Capitol Police officers with me on my detail. He tried to kill both of them. Suicide by cop is not when you try to kill everybody around, including the cops. And by the way, he didn't even know they were cops because they were dressed in plain clothes. And he had every intention of carrying out a politically motivated message. He wrote about it, and they had that evidence, and they suppressed it. So it was very disappointing. We walked out of the meeting that day because we were so infuriated that that was their conclusion. I'm glad that Kash Patel is getting the FBI back to a fact-based organization where they follow the evidence, not try to have a pre-disclosed conclusion, but where they actually look at the facts and make their conclusion based on the evidence. That's what he's done with this new report. And I think it's important that they got it right. It's also important that they find out who the people were that suppressed evidence for a political motivated reason.
Do you believe that?
I think that is perfectly stated. Steve Scalise keeping his anger level down and his factual disposition on a level playing, making sure he is not angry. He is passionate about truth, having to do with the attempted murder of everyone in the Republican caucus and almost killed Steve Scalise. I can remember when he came into the State of the Union and got the standing ovation because it was very close for him. And I'm very glad Kash Patel is doing this, and Dan Bongino. And you got to wonder, what were they thinking? Why would they not release that stuff? It sort of goes to the shooter in Nashville as well, the trans shooter whose manifesto was suppressed forever. And they're managing the news, or they were managing the news. The Bureau is managing the news, trying to affect your perception of what happened. I don't know when they got into that business. They ought to get out of that business. I think Kash Patel is going to make sure they do. Pam Bondi's going to make sure they do. Speaking of Pam Bondi, she had a presser today, cut number 15.
This multi-agency operation led by DEA with our local, state, tribal, and federal partners targeted one of the largest and most dangerous drug trafficking and foreign terrorist organizations in our country. The DEA seized 11.5 kilos of fentanyl, including an astounding approximately 3 million fentanyl pills, the largest seizure in our nation's history. These are the pills in the bags right there.
Surprised they even let that into DOJ. That is so much killer fentanyl. A long time ago, when I worked for Attorney General William French Smith, we ran an operation that became a big deal, and it involved my job a little bit, so I got to see it, and we had to know what to declassify, et cetera, where we tracked precursor chemicals. And it was a big deal. It was a big deal because it was precursor. This is in the mid-'80s. And we tracked the barrels in which precursor chemicals were being shipped to bad guys in, I think it was Colombia. and we did the whole deal. But we wouldn't have brought the drugs into the DOJ because that's dangerous. But that's an astonishing number of fentanyl pills. That's what we're dealing with. That's, by the way, why we're getting tough with China. Now, I got asked about China last night on Special Report by Brett Baer. Here's my response, cut 17.
Hugh, are we seeing China really feel the pinch here to the point where they may really be forced to the table by their economic situation?
I think we are, Brett. I think President Trump has the correct measure of Xi Jinping, the General Secretary of the Communist Party. He's a tough man. He's a very tough man. And Trump is playing a tough game with him, which is what one has to do if you're going to take on maybe the most ruthless man in the world. Now, Donald Trump is always respectful of him, but China cannot afford not to have 3% GDP growth a year. They're going backwards right now. So whatever it is that Trump is doing, it's working. My hat's off to him. Now, the president today in the Oval Office gaggle with Mark Carney, the new prime minister in Canada, said this about China, cut number 7, where he discusses the People's Republic of China.
China.
I was hoping you could clarify something. Earlier this morning in Capitol Hill, Secretary Bessent said that there had been no negotiations yet with China. You have said something different.
They want to meet, and they're doing no business right now. And those ships are turning around in the Pacific Ocean. Big turn. Those are big ships. Those ships take about 10 miles to turn. And, we lost $1 trillion to China on trade because of an incompetent president that we had who preceded me, grossly incompetent. You're finding it out more and more now. And by not trading, we're losing nothing. So we're saving $1 trillion. It's a lot. But they want to negotiate, and they want to have a meeting, and we'll be meeting with them at the right time.
But you haven't met with them yet.
I have not met with them, of course. You would know if I met. I'd tell you.
Yeah, you haven't met with him yet. Honestly, sometimes I wonder when reporters run out of questions and they don't know what to ask, and they just follow up because they have a chance to follow up. But you haven't met with him yet, as opposed to saying, there are 1,000 questions you can ask Donald Trump. I am increasingly persuaded nobody prepares for anything in the White House press corps when you get dumb questions like that. And I don't know. You haven't met with him yet? Like, we wouldn't know that if he'd met with Xi Jinping. My guest is Ohio's Attorney General Dave Yost. He is the author of this brand new book, Stand, An Ohio Life. I came in with Layla for a reason. General Yost, welcome. Why don't you tell him why I came in with Layla?
Well, it's one of the songs that I play with my band from time to time.
That's exactly right. I've actually found Stand in Ohio Life to be fabulous reading. I am from Ohio, though, so I know most of the places that you write about and most of the people that you write about. And I enjoy the fact that as a Republican, you've won 4 out of 4 statewide races, right?
I have never lost one yet. Don't
And
intend to
so
start now.
I know, and I like Yo-Yost. I like Y4AG. I don't know what tricky thing you're going to come up with, but here's what I learned in this book. I did not learn you ran on the platform of protecting the unprotected based upon Peggy Noonan's most important essay of the last 25 years, The Rise of the Unprotected. Would you tell people why you adopted that and why it matters so much in Stand?
So Peggy Noonan, of course, former Reagan speechwriter and Bush speechwriter, uh, and now an eminent pundit, I guess, at the Wall Street Journal. She wrote in the middle of the whole Trump phenomenon, when everybody in the elite coastal community was going, "What's going on with this guy? Why is everybody like him so much?" She wrote an incredible piece that just I thought was eye-opening, and talked about how most people in America that are reading books and living in Washington or New York are protected. They've got enough money in the bank that if the transmission goes out in their car, they've got an option. Maybe it'll hurt, they'll trade it in, maybe they'll get it fixed, but it doesn't mean they're going to lose their job, they're going to lose their apartment because they lost their job, they're going to be homeless in short order. They're more or less protected. They've got information, they've got training, they've got networks, they can navigate society. But President Trump, all the way back in 2015 and 16, was speaking to the unprotected America, the people that if the alternator goes out on your car, you have a life crisis that could threaten the ability to even have food and shelter for your family because they're living paycheck to paycheck. They don't know who to call. If they do try to call somebody, they're on hold forever. They're unprotected. And Trump was speaking to those people. I was so taken by that because I know those people. I went to school with them. I go to church with them. They're the people in Ohio's counties and towns all across this state. And I was so taken with it. I thought that says a lot in one phrase: protect the unprotected. It's my mission.
It's a great mission statement, and I thought it was very revealing that you would use that when you ran for Attorney General. Let me dive into the book Stand. The funniest line in Stand is on page 110. Governor John Kasich is a rough and often irritating man and a difficult person to talk with. Try moderating 4 debates with him on the stage, David Yost, because he doesn't stay put. He doesn't even. So when you face off with Vivek Ramaswamy, who, by the way, his blurb is at the top of your book, I think that's an amazing act of trolling, David Yost. So that's very, very funny. But when you square off against Vivek, and I'm happy to moderate the debate, I think you both trust me to be fair. Who's John Kasich going to be for, and do either of you want his endorsement?
Well, look, as I talk about in the book, I have had some pretty serious fights with John Kasich. We've had our differences over the years. For example, I'm a Republican. So I would love his vote, but I don't know that I want his. I don't know that I want his endorsement.
He's been both a boon and a thorn in my side for a long time. A very difficult guy to interview, General, because he doesn't stay on topic. Let me go to the next thing that I found both entertaining, and I had to be careful. I had to do a little Oppo research before I brought this up, because I'm from Warren, which is next door to Niles, and I know there's some Infantes who went to John F. Kennedy High School, and I didn't know if Ralph was among them, but my brothers tell me they don't remember any Infantes, so I don't think he's a Kennedy grad. Can you go to Niles, or do you need protection when you go to Niles?
Well, of course I can go to Niles, but I take my security detail with me.
Did you? You pick when you write a book about this, you have to pick some case studies. First Energy's in here, but Infante interests me because it's Niles. What did you leave out of the book? I mean, you could have obviously written a much longer. You did a nice sized book. I got it done in a day and a half. I said, okay, this was really well written for a campaign. What did you not try to explain to people because it's too lawyerly?
Oh, that's a great deal of the work in our office. The major questions doctrine, for example, or vertical separation of powers, as opposed to everybody's familiar with horizontal. The courts, the executive, Congress. We also have federalism and vertical separation of powers that has a whole different set of implications. So, just an awful lot of things that I'm fascinated with, and I know you are as well, as a lawyer. And I knew I would lose people. I had my wife read this manuscript as we went by, because I figured when she lost interest, I was going to lose everybody else.
I thought you moved along at a very good clip through federalism and through everything that the auditor does. I did not know what the auditor did. I grew up there. I had no idea what OAS or AOS was until I actually read this, and that's pretty. I knew about the redistricting commission. So tell me where we are on redistricting in Ohio. Is that settled now? Did the initiative prevail? I don't really know.
Well, the voters saw through the institutionalized gerrymander that they tried to put in the Constitution that would have cemented Democrat rule in this state for the foreseeable future and put it in the bedrock of our Constitution. The voters saw through that and voted it down. It's still a live issue. And of course, we have redistricting coming up here. So I suspect, as is appropriate in a country and a state that is governed by the sovereign people, we'll continue to talk about how do we do it, how do you draw the lines, who holds the pencil, how do you approve it. But for the moment, the voter approved changes of 2015 and 2018, which made some major improvements for fairness, are the law of the land.
Well, that's good to know. Stand by, Attorney General Yost. I'm going to go to a break and then come right back. The book is Stand, An Ohio Life by Dave Yost, and I love the people you've got endorsing it, including Larry Arnn, who is well known to my audience, the president of Hillsdale College, James Pinkerton from the W White House. But my favorite is Vivek Ramaswamy on the cover. Dave Yost fought against the woke and won. That's why this is kind of a giant troll at the same time as it's really a primer on how state government ought to work. That gentleman is David Yost. He's the Attorney General of the state of Ohio. He's the author of this brand new book, Stand, An Ohio Life. He is running for governor in Ohio. He's going to be running against Vivek Ramaswamy. Couple of notes, General. First of all, you used the term subpoena duces tecum on page 118. That's a running joke in my old law firm. Whenever we wanted to confuse people, we would say subpoena duces tecum, and they never had a clue what we were talking about. So that was funny. The thing that was shocking was count day. I had no idea until I read about count day, how that mattered, and what hijinks is not the right word. Crimes went on. You want to give people a 2-minute explanation of count day and what you found?
So one of the things that we've got wrong in education is we basically pay for butts in the seat. Count day was the day, it was like the census. It was when we counted every kid in school, which school, and as long as you were there, you got funded for the year. So obviously, if you're a tax taker or you're running a school, you want to make sure everybody's there. So they came up with things like pajama day. You can come in your pajamas. My mother would have turned over me over her knee and spanked me if I even suggested such a thing. They came up with pizza and gift card giveaways, and would literally send staff out into the neighborhood just one day, beating the bushes, trying to get the kids to show up for school. Rest of the year, not so much. But when the money was on the line, they were there with innovation and hard work, which tells us that if we change the way we pay, we might get innovation and hard work in other areas that will give us a better education system. And I've got some ideas on how to do that I'll be talking about over the next year of this campaign.
You know, General, you'll be on a lot in the next year, as will Vivek. And I don't know when the primary is, but right up until then, I'll be talking to you both. However, you have twice gone up against Ivy League entitled people, both David Pepper and Steve Dettelbach. I mean, you have made a habit out of slaying Ivy League opponents. Are you going to run the same campaign? Because the difference this time is you raised $5 million in your last campaign for Attorney General. Vivek can sneeze and spend $5 million, right? What are you going to do?
Well, we're going to show that we've got a record of results, not just rhetoric. Look, if money were all that counted, we would all be looking backwards on the presidency of Mr. Bloomberg, a billionaire who tried to run and didn't get there, or the presidency of Jeb Bush, who had more money than anybody had ever seen. So it's not having the most money, it's having enough money. And fortunately for me, people know my record here in Ohio, and I've made a difference in people's lives. That's something to talk about. I haven't been changing my mind or changing my lines to fit with the applause of the moment.
Well, you know, there's a name in this book that comes up a few times, Jim Rhodes. I grew up in Jim Rhodes, Ohio. And he knew about the canary seat. He knew about everything else. But he also was a pretty doggone good retail politician. And he'd show up in Warren on a regular basis. Are you going to run a Rhodesian campaign without the corruption? I hope there was corruption in the Jim Rhodes campaign.
Yeah, we'll definitely skip the old school rough and tumble stuff that Roy Martin used to specialize in. But yeah, this is about getting out there and being with the people. I've been doing it for the past year. I feel like I'm living out of my car and asking people I just met to give me money. Probably training for homelessness, but it's a wonderful experience to be out in Ohio, away from Capitol Square, and talking to people where they actually live. What's important to them? And let me tell you, it's not the stuff that you're seeing on the elites talking about.
You've been willing to debate everyone that you've run against. And a couple of those debates are in here, including the first one with then former Senator DeWine, now Governor DeWine, right up through Dettelbach, et cetera. Are you going to be debating Vivek?
Love to. Anytime, anywhere. In fact, Vivek, if you're watching this, I know Jay probably is for Oppo research. I'll tell you what, let's reprise Lincoln Douglas. Let's do a series of them around the state. You're a smart guy. I love talking with you. It'll make both of us better, and it'll help the voters make a good choice. What do you say?
There were 7 of those. They were an hour went to the first person, an hour and a half went to the response, and then the opener got 30 minutes. I'd love that. Do you think he's going to accept that?
Oh, I'm down with that.
I think it would be fabulous. But if you need a moderator, call me. Dave Yost, congratulations on Stan. It's a lot of fun. People ought to go and read it if they want to know how Ohio works. Dave Yost has its number. Thank you, General. I'll talk to you again soon. Following the breaking news where India has launched 9 different strikes inside of Pakistan's territory in reprisal for the terrorist attack in Kashmir last week. No response thus far from Pakistan. Let's hope it stays that way. And then it's done, because you don't want 2 nuclear powers throwing silos at each other. Also want you to know that Chancellor Merz is actually now Chancellor of Germany. In a very unexpected turn of events, the first time that it happened in post-war Germany ever, Merz, who had won the election, was the chancellor and waiting for like 3 months, put together a coalition. They put it to a secret vote, and he didn't get a majority. So 12 members of his coalition didn't vote for him. Very embarrassing to him. Other breaking news: the Supreme Court has allowed President Trump's ban on transgender military service to remain in place. Joined now by James Lilacs of Lilacs.com fame. You can go to Lilacs.com if you want to listen to his podcast, Rise and Dine with Jimmy Lilacs, which is available via Lilacs at his Substack. James, first of all, do you have a favorite in the conclave that starts tomorrow?
Yeah, I think Judge Boasberg. I think there's a pretty good chance that he's going to be one.
Pope Boasberg. I got asked last night
Yeah.
if I was offended by the Donald Trump meme of him in a papal gear, and I was not. Were you? You're not Catholic, but I'm just checking everywhere in case someone was offended.
No, I'm kind of used to it. I mean, the day on May 4th to celebrate Star Wars, he had himself as a rather beefy Luke Skywalker, which was not the physiognomy or the shape of Luke, but I suppose people who took the Sith and the Force very seriously were offended by that. It's all trolling, 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 trolling. But how anybody can not be in favor of Cardinal Pizzaballa is beyond me. I mean, if we
That's
actually
my
got to
choice.
the point where we would have Papa John Pizzaballa as Pope would bring throngs in. Now you could say that like Papa John's, he well, no, that's the other one. That's Papa Murphy that's half baked. I want one whose theology is completely baked. But yeah, I look forward to it an awful lot. Apparently, though, the footage from Yemen seems to indicate that they've elected about 150 popes because there's black smoke pouring from absolutely everywhere.
I just got done talking to David Yost, the Attorney General of Ohio. Since we're talking about trolling, he's running for governor in Ohio against Vivek Ramaswamy. This is the greatest troll I think I've ever seen. On the front cover of his book, Stand, is the blurb from Vivek Ramaswamy. Dave Yost fought against the woke and won. Do you think that's up there in the troll Hall of Fame?
yes, I certainly do. But I'm wondering exactly when we're going to retire the term woke, because it has become a signifier. It's become easy. We need something new, don't we? Just though, I mean, we're now at the point where we're hearing about the woke right, which seems to indicate the horseshoe theory is correct, that eventually the extremism on both sides joins at one certain point. And I'm looking for something entirely new. And you should actually poll your audience on what that term might be. Because
I think you're filibustering because you don't want to talk about the next topic. You don't want to talk about your storied history in the canoe. I read only moments ago in the Minneapolis Star Tribune. It went up at 5:15. When canoeing was king, author explores a dream era for Minnesota racing. Big crowds, native paddling heroes, and canoe designs are part of a colorful history in pushing the river. I myself, you never told me that there used to be a 450-mile paddle at all cost river race from Bemidji to Minneapolis that drew thousands of folks to the finish lines on the banks of the Mississippi. Have you ever, or are you now, a canoer?
No, I am not a canoer. I'm not a kayaker. I am not a one-man paddle kind of guy. But I do like the idea of starting up in Bemidji, I think, where the Mississippi River itself begins. So if you're going from there to Minneapolis, it's a great race. But you have to have a whole bunch of people in Minneapolis with nets and grappling hooks, because otherwise they go right all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. And I can't tell you the number of people that we've lost, canoers who were just so enthusiastic and kept going. And the next thing you know, they're in Mark Twain territory. And after that, they're in the Gulf of, did I say the Gulf of Mexico? I meant, of course, the Gulf of America.
The Gulf of
so
America.
Yeah, it's a fine tradition up here.
The Minnesota Historical Press published this book, Pushing the River, and it draws special attention to the Paul Bunyan Canoe Derby, a 450-mile paddle at all costs race. So, first of all, wasn't Paul Bunyan from Wisconsin?
No, we don't claim. No, they are erroneous in their complaints. As a matter of fact, in the Pacific Northwest, you can find towns that claim to have Paul Bunyan lineage. He is one of ours. He is used by one of our pancake flour people. He's ours, and we have statuary of him to boot. There was once in Bemidji, I believe, a large animatronic Paul Bunyan. Huge, sat on a stage that was made with wood, that enormous trees that he had felled, and he sat there with his hands on his knees. And when you entered as a small child, Paul Bunyan would call your name. His head would move with a mechanical clank, and he would call your name. And if you were beyond pamper age at that time in your life, you re-entered it very quickly. The size of this giant, of course, your dad had told him the name of the front gate when you walked in. But every kid of my boomer age who walked in and saw Paul look at them and fix them with that immense, impassive gaze and hear his name be called, has loved Paul ever since. He's a god that we worship and fear greatly. So no, Wisconsin can't.
Is he gone from Bemidji? Is he missing? Did he walk away?
Well, the amusement park closed down. The Paul was disassembled, and he was reassembled later. I don't know if they're open still, but there are statuary of him scattered throughout. Now, some of them are repainted every year, so they tend to get less distinct as time goes on. The trademark checkerboard pattern gets a little bit of a smear of red and white, and Babe the Blue Ox, her eyes aren't as sharp as they used to be. And his girlfriend, I think, I forget her name, she gets a bad paint job every year too. But no, we still have statuary. We still pay obeisance to him, as we should.
All right, last quick question, Lilacs. Have they had the Winter Ice Palace since I was last at it, like 20 years ago?
No, I don't believe so. I like to blame global warming, but they have it. They have the ice carving. They have the festivals. But it's been a long time since we've had one of those magnificent structures where we like to tell people who are new here that yes, of course we build ice houses and live in them. That's what we do in this part of the world. When frankly, it's a really bad idea. But they're cool to look at. The problem of global warming, of course, has destroyed that. And next thing you know,
I think it's because your governor, Tim Walz. I believe Tim Walz is against the ice castle. James Lilacs, follow him at lilacs.com. Listen to his Substack, his podcast, Rise and Dine with Jimmy Lilacs. Listen to it in the diner and enjoy him every day. Lilacs.com. I'm surprised I haven't been hit by a baseball. The Guardians are playing the Nationals in a doubleheader at Nationals Park tonight. And it's 8-7 with the Guards having scored 6 runs in the top of the 7th. And so it's 8-7, 6-run top of the 7th. It's not a good look for the Nationals.
If a baseball hits you, wouldn't that be a foul ball?
It would be a home run, actually. It'd be across the river.
I thought it pointed the other direction.
No, I go the other way. It comes out at me. I got to ask you something. This guy's pitching like you do. I mean, 6 runs in an inning. How many pitchers do you think they went through?
6 runs an inning. You're basically, that's a bullpen game. Is what we
that's
call
a bullpen. Exactly right. So I have no idea. But now the Nats have runners at the corner with 2 outs in the bottom of the 7th, and this is the beginning of a doubleheader. They're going to be there till midnight. I don't know how long they had planned for this doubleheader, but it's now almost.
And you typically don't want to run through your entire bullpen in game 1.
In game 1 of the doubleheader,
yes.
Exactly. And so both clubs, this could be a 40-run night at National Stadium, but that doesn't matter because the Cavaliers are playing the Pacers tonight.
Right fielder's going to end up pitching, probably.
Yeah, actually, Austin Hedges ended up pitching the other night for the Guards. He's our catcher. And the game was out of reach. But when you can score 6 runs against the bullpen for the Nationals, that's good news. Hey, I got to tell everyone, especially my new affiliate, WBOB, down in Jacksonville, AM 600 and 101.1 FM. I got to tell everyone, don't forget, especially if you're on the Guardians or the Nationals, relief factor. Because you're doing a lot of run. If you're a reliever for the Nationals, you definitely need relief factor because something went wrong with your bullpen. You were up 7-1. Going into the inning, and now you're down 7-2, and now you're down 8-7. You need relief factor. Call 1-800-4 and the word relief. They've been a sponsor of mine forever. For the benefit of the new listeners in Jacksonville who say, "Hey, I like this guy. Who's this guy?" I'm Hugh Hewitt. The sponsor of the studio and of this program forever has been Relief Factor. I don't take supplements except Relief Factor. I've been on the air for 25 years this July. With the Salem Radio Network. I've been on since the Salem News Channel started, and I'm the only supplement I've ever had on the Salem News Channel. I show you the bag if you're watching, is, of course, Relief Factor. And the reason is simple. I don't ever promote or suggest that you use a product that I myself do not use. And so I tested it out, found that it worked, and then I began to accept the sponsorship, and I love it, and I believe you ought to use it. And no matter how old you get or what your exercise choice is, or if you're just getting older and you're not exercising, that would be Dwayne, then try Relief Factor. 1-800-4 and the word relief. Send some to the Nats. Send some to the Guards. Send some to the Pacers, because I think it's going to get pretty physical at Rocket Arena tonight. But relieffactor.com is their website. If you go there and find the starter pack at $19.95. Head over to the Hewitt page at YouTube. If you missed the David Yost or the Haviv Reddy Gore interviews from earlier today, like and subscribe, please. Hugh Hewitt, YouTube, or go to the universe and join. Thank you for listening.